What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. The Super Bowl was an absolute disaster. I really don't want to talk about it. It's been a year from hell for New York Giants fans. We could rant about the Super Bowl. We could rant about Eli Manning not being in the Hall of Fame. It all absolutely sucked for the past 365 days for the New York Giants, but I don't want to focus on it. Just going to get that out of the way. Not going to be talking about that. Instead, we're going to be looking towards the future. What can the New York Giants do to make sure that the last year that just happened never happens again? And a lot of that is going to play a part in the upcoming NFL draft. The Giants have to find a way to forge a brighter future for themselves. And they're probably going to have to draft a quarterback in order to make that future feel a whole lot brighter for Giants fans. But right now, picking number 3 overall, will they be able to draft a quarterback there? Or will they have to make a trade to move up in the draft? And that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode. Over the week, obviously with all of the different GMs and media analysts and everybody in the same location for the Super Bowl, word of mouth started to go around. And there was a report that the Tennessee Titans do plan on taking calls for the number 1 overall pick in the draft and that they are very much open to trading down. Can the New York Giants potentially be planning a move up to the first overall pick to draft a quarterback? And which quarterback would that be? Well, Alex has his speculation, I have mine, and we have a whole lot to discuss in that topic, and that's what we are going to dive into in today's episode. So, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? Let's steer clear of the Super Bowl. I really don't want to talk about it. I was very depressed last night. It's disgusting that the Eagles, I can't even believe I said their team name, that they won. But how are you feeling about this new rumor here that the Tennessee Titans are potentially looking to trade down and that the Giants could be one of the teams interested in moving up?
Yeah, I mean, listen, tough time to be a Giants fan, no doubt, but we hopefully look ahead to the 2025 NFL Draft as an opportunity to get back in the mix and at least be competent. So, Mike Barganzi, I believe, the Titans' new GM, Ian Rappaport reported that they are considering moving back. They're fine sticking and picking. They're fine moving back. They're open to all the possibilities. And the Giants, obviously being the 3rd overall selection, are sitting there like, well, let's go call and see what it costs. Let's be honest. They're going to call. They're going to see what it costs to move up 2 spots. Maybe it's their 2nd round pick. Maybe it's a 1st round pick for 2026, which I think would be a horrific idea. If it included next year's 1st round pick, I'm hanging up the phone. Can't do it. You just cannot mortgage the future on one of these quarterbacks. And look, I like Cam Ward. I like Sanders. But last year, yeah, I would have sent a 1st round pick for Jaden Daniels or Drake May. I would have done it in a heartbeat because those guys were a lot better prospects in my opinion. But I'm not doing it for Sanders. I think most analysts have him as a sub 20 prospect on their rankings. And I get you have to look at players, especially the quarterback position, with a premium. But Sanders is not a 1st overall pick to me. And there's no way in hell I'm mortgaging the future, especially with Joe Shane and Brian Dable on the hot seat, to go up and get Sanders. If he's there at 3, so be it. I can justify making that selection. I can justify investing a 3rd overall pick in him. But no way in hell should the Giants be trading a future draft, even a 2nd round pick from this year. I'm not trading to go get Sanders because I think he's going to be there at 3. And if the Raiders have the balls to go from 6 to 2 or 6 to 1 and get Sanders, so be it. Right? I'll walk away with Abdul Carter and I'll trade up and get Jackson Dart. I'm so okay with that, right? Like I'm so down for that. Or you just go and sign a Russell Wilson and you get yourself an elite edge presence, or you get a Travis Hunter elite receiver / cornerback. You could, whatever position he takes to better than the NFL, you can stick and play him at. And your team is a lot better than it was last year. And obviously, yeah, that puts you in a little bit of a difficult spot at the quarterback position because you don't have that rookie on the roster. I just don't see how Sanders isn't going to be there at 3. You know what I mean? I mean, the Raiders, if they really have that much conviction in him, and they're willing to take that risk, so be it. I know you have a differing opinion on this. Like, if you have conviction, you should go up and get him. I just don't think there's a world where the Giants have as much conviction as Sanders as they did with a May or a Daniels last year, right? And they were willing to part ways with future capital to do it. I think they're going to call the Titans and see what they have to offer, see what they want in return for that 1st overall pick, and it's going to cost them, obviously. But I just can't sit here and act like Sanders is worth it. Like in the competition he went up against, and I like Sanders. I think he has some really good traits. But he is not a player I can convince myself to trade up 1st overall to get. I know you have a differing opinion on that, and I think we'll have a good discussion on that front.
I'll just say first off, he's not worth it until he is, right? And that's always how it is with quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes was technically not worth trading up for at number 10. 3 Super Bowls later, he was worth trading a whole lot more for. Maybe Josh Allen wasn't trading up into the top 10 for. Well, an MVP and a bunch of regular season and playoff wins later, he's absolutely worth it now. But then again, maybe Trey Lance wasn't worth trading up for, and he still isn't worth trading up for. It's really you live and you die by your quarterback. And it's very tough as Giants fans, especially when we've gotten burned for a lot of moves, and it seems like every move we make ends up being the wrong one. Trading up for quarterback is one of the riskiest things that an NFL organization can do. It has the highest risk, the highest reward, and the lowest possible floor. So, as a New York Giants fan, when everything we've done has seemingly turned to shit over the last several years, the Daniel Jones contract, the Saquon Barkley negotiations, watching Xavier McKinney become a Defensive Player of the Year candidate elsewhere, when we see all of this happen, it becomes very hard to justify making such a risky and bold move for a quarterback. But at the end of the day, if you have an opportunity to get a quarterback that you have conviction in, you have to try and do it, is my opinion. So if the New York Giants do trade up for a quarterback, it's going to sting, especially if they give up a lot of future draft capital for it. But if the quarterback ends up becoming a Pro Bowl caliber player or an All Pro caliber player, you will completely forget about all those draft picks that the New York Giants didn't have to make selections with. They will go completely out of your mind. Now, that's going to come down to personal preference and predictions. Alex, if you don't think that Shedeur Sanders is ever going to become an all-pro player, then you're not going to want to make this trade. However, if you're Joe Shane and you have a conviction, you think there is a good chance he becomes that all-pro player, you're going to make that trade. And you're going to have to live with that as a Giants fan and just ignore the what-if scenario about all those other draft picks. Because here's the thing, Alex. When the Chiefs traded for Mahomes or the Bills traded for Allen, and I know that's the high end of the spectrum. Maybe even just think about when the Ravens traded up. They made a small trade into the back end of the first round for Lamar Jackson. Minimal draft capital. Those draft picks that they traded away in order to get their franchise quarterbacks mean nothing. They don't care about them. And you know what? I think we as Giants fans focus a little bit too much on the draft and think that it has way more importance than it truly does. Don't get me wrong, it's completely important. But if you are a good GM and you have a good front office, you can rebuild and build a roster from the ground up without a boatload of draft capital. Having draft capital really helps, and building through the draft is important. But the Los Angeles Rams have pretty much built their roster through trades and free agent signings. The San Francisco 49ers traded away a ton of future draft capital, went 3 years, I think, without making a first round selection, still built a contending roster by hitting on late round draft picks. So it's not always about keeping your first round draft picks and adding extra first and second round draft picks. Sometimes it truly is about hitting on those late round picks, taking risks with those early round draft picks, maybe missing on them like the Niners did with Lance, but hitting on that late pick in a Brock Purdy. Or if you are the Los Angeles Rams, making a trade for a Matt Stafford and rebuilding your roster through the rest of the draft. Mid-round picks, Cooper Kupp being a late pick, Puka Nacua being a late pick. So there are many different ways to build an NFL roster. And again, I'm just kind of going through these examples to say, if the Giants trade up and they give up significant draft capital to get to the number one pick, it stings, especially knowing all they had to do was lose one more game this season and we wouldn't even be having this conversation because they would just have the first overall pick. Man, do I wish that was the case. But again, the future draft capital that they would give up for a quarterback, it only matters if the quarterback is bad. If the quarterback is good, who gives a shit? Now you've got a franchise quarterback, and that's the only thing that matters. So that's just the argument that I'm going to make for the trade, Alex. Just really all of that to say, it doesn't, the value isn't there until it is, basically. You know, like it's a move that you would be upset about until Shedeur gives you a reason not to be upset about it. But then we also have to have the other half of this conversation. Who should the number one overall pick be? Should it be Shedeur Sanders like the Giants seemingly want it to be? Should it be Cam Ward, the player with the higher ceiling, right? The guy who has the potential to really be a perennial all-pro player if he's in the right situation? Or do you get the guy who you think can help you win immediately in Shedeur Sanders, who's a very gifted player in terms of his mental makeup and IQ and processing? It then becomes a big conversation over which quarterback do you take. But at the end of the day, my take here, Alex, is the value's not there until it is. It's a risk that you have to be willing to take as an NFL general manager if you legitimately want to forge a future and get a franchise quarterback, because you're picking top three. As Giants fans, we feel like picking in the top five is the standard for us. The Giants don't want that to be the case. They don't want to be picking high in 2026. So with that in mind, their mindset is going to be, if we're picking top 3 now, let's go ahead and get that quarterback and get to a decent level so that we're picking 10 to 20 next year, rather than 1 to 10, and just forget about that future draft and just focus on getting a quarterback in here for the future. Because if they actually win 6 games next year and they're picking 10 to 20, well, then getting that quarterback in 2026 is going to be a lot harder than it is right now when they're picking top 3. So when you're in striking distance, you make the big swing. And the last point that I'll make, Alex, you did mention Las Vegas Raiders potentially being one of those teams that might try and trade up, right? Maybe they try and get ahead of the New York Giants for Shedeur Sanders. And then there's the other half of the discussion. Is Shedeur Sanders worth it? For me, I don't know if I can argue with the conviction of Tom Brady. I might have my opinion of Shedeur Sanders, and maybe it's not, maybe I don't think he's worth trading up for the first overall pick, which is not what I'm saying. But let's just say, Alex, I know you said that blatantly, that you don't think he's worth trading up for the first overall pick. If Tom Brady thinks he's worth it, then I don't know. It's hard for me to argue against Tom Brady is going to be my take on it. Now, Joe Shane and his analysis, we can have a very open debate about that. But again, I think if you have a conviction on a quarterback and you're picking and striking distance, you swing for the home run. You don't play scared. Scared money don't make money if you want to use the Joe Shane clip on draft night when he traded up for Jalen Hyatt. But this is completely different. This is trading for a quarterback. And again, when you have an opportunity for a franchise quarterback, even if you're not 100% convinced that he's going to be a franchise quarterback, I doubt the Bills were when they threw a dart at the board for Josh Allen. If you're not 100% convinced, but you're slightly convinced, I think you have to go ahead and maximize the opportunity and take the chance.
Yeah, and I can understand that train of thought. Obviously, we'll see if the Raiders and Tom Brady have that much conviction in him. For now, we don't know. If they decide, yeah, we're not going to do that, maybe that's an indication they don't feel as highly about Sanders as others. And this is not to say that I think he's a bad prospect. I don't. I think if they took him at 3, you could justify it. You could sit there and say, you know what, he's got a really, really great traits, really great fundamentals, solid arm. There are red flags, obviously, and I think that I would wrap my head around why they did it. But trading up for him, and the reason I'm not entirely convinced about trading up for him, and yeah, like obviously you can look at the examples of, okay, they traded up for Mahomes or, Josh Allen. Like you look at these unicorns and say, it was worth it. But they're like a very small percentage of players that actually work out, right? So like you're looking at a maybe 5% chance you get a perennial all-pro player by trading up. And like that gamble, and you're mortgaging the future or your second round pick in this instance maybe, is a risk that I think is unnecessary. Right? And that's where I'd say for a 5% chance at hitting that, mortgaging our other valuable draft capital is not worth it to me. If it was like a 25% chance, I would take the chance. Because that's like you have a good shot that maybe that guy ends up becoming something. But for a 5% shot at that working out, especially for a player like Sanders, who I do like, but I think that he's on the top of his progression curve. I don't think his progression as an athlete, I don't think his progression as a player, aside from his mental attributes, who I think can get a lot better, I think as a physical specimen, he's about where he's going to be. Like he's not going to get much more. He's not going to get faster. He's not going to get that much stronger. He is where he is athletically, and I think that's where like I'm like, okay, we know what his dimensions are. We know what kind of quarterback he's going to be. He's going to be a good processor. He's got a good but not great arm. We love his fade. He throws a really nice deep ball. Like we like a lot of stuff about him. I just don't see like an astronomical arc in his progression at the NFL level. That's just how I personally view it, which is why the consensus is Cam Ward's progression is better and his ceiling is higher, because I think that Cam Ward's kind of just entering that ascension of his upside. I think that's where I see Cam Ward and his talents, and that's why I think I could justify moving up to get Cam, but I don't think I could do it to get Sanders, because I just don't think the upside of being a perennial All-Pro or an All-Pro in general is there for him. And I think that's just my opinion. You're welcome to disagree, and obviously, some of you guys will. And I think that taking Sanders at 3 can be justified, but I don't think that the arc of progression is similar to Ward's in any sense. And I think that Ward's could be substantial, and that I would gamble on that, because that gamble is a little bit different.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just want to try and play devil's advocate so we can form greater opinions and kind of like dig deeper on this. Okay, so you're saying you don't think Shedeur is worth trading to number 1 for, but you think maybe Cam could be. But I want to present you with this question. I know I kind of alluded to this already. And try and position yourselves as the New York Giants. Like, you're Joe Shane. You've missed on a lot of draft picks, right? But when certain guys around the league have a conviction on a player, you kind of tend to listen to those guys, right? Like, let's say the Ravens, they always they hit on great draft picks. If their GM has a conviction over somebody, you have to assume that there's a reason for that, right? Like they took Nate Wiggins in the first round last year. There was a lot of questions. Should he be a first round pick? Injuries. Well, yeah, he ran into some injuries as a rookie, but he was a stud when he was on the field. So you know that that's going to be the case when the Ravens draft him. So again, back to the Tom Brady conversation, because I think that's one that's going to be brought up a lot throughout this pre-draft process. There's a lot of rumors and reports. Brady's trained a lot with Shedeur Sanders. He's got a strong relationship with Dion. And the rumor is that he truly believes Shedeur Sanders is going to be a franchise quarterback. So if you're sitting in the Giants draft room, you're Joe Schoen or you're one of his assistants, executives, whatever, does that not carry any weight? The fact that the greatest quarterback to ever play the sport feels like Shedeur Sanders is going to be a perennial All-Pro, does that not influence your opinion at all? Because for me, I think it does. I mean, again, form your own opinions. Of course, that's what I always do, and that's what you always do. We watch the film live on the channel, and then we form our opinions in live time with the live chat. Everybody who sees our opinions on Shedeur Sanders watches us actually form them live on the channel from watching all 22. However, does Tom Brady feeling a certain way about Shedeur Sanders influence your opinion at all, Alex? Or do you think that it should influence the opinion of a Joe Schoen? I think that's an interesting question to pose.
So my response to that is pretty general. Like, I think Tom Brady has a relationship with Deion Sanders. Like, they're good friends. Tom Brady has no reason to bash Shedeur Sanders, right? There's no reason. Like, he wants to prop him up because it's Deion's son, and he's friends with Deion. I think that I think objectively there is bias in his opinion publicly.
Sure.
Right? And if I'm Joe Schoen and I hear Tom Brady publicly saying, well, I think he's going to be a franchise, so he's just supporting his friend, in my opinion.
Yes, but I'm saying take the public comments out. I'm saying if you're Joe Schoen and you're talking to the Titans and the Titans are like, yeah, we'll trade you the pick. However, I got to let you know, I just got off the phone with Tom Brady and the Raiders, and Tom Brady is pushing to trade up for the #1 overall pick. Does that, and that's a private, now you know for sure, okay, Tom Brady's serious about it.
And we know it's Sanders, not Ward. Okay,
yeah, we know that it's Sanders. We know there's a bidding war now for Sanders. You're the Giants GM, and the Titans GM just told you Tom Brady's trying to trade up for Shedeur Sanders. Does that not influence your opinion and make you say, I got to make sure I get this guy so that Tom Brady doesn't?
I think that if you're a GM and you're Joe Schoen, who's certainly proven he's got some moxie and he's certainly confident in himself, I don't think I'm letting anything on the outside, the exterior of the franchise, weigh in on my decision. You know what I mean? If Tom Brady loves Sanders, that's Tom Brady. That doesn't mean he's going to be a great quarterback. It just means that he thinks Sanders has something, and many GMs have come and gone thinking a player has something. And look, Tom Brady, obviously one of the best of all time, but Tom Brady can't throw the ball for Shedeur Sanders. Tom Brady can't process for Shedeur Sanders. Tom Brady can't motivate his offensive line. Tom Brady, you know what I mean? Like, Sanders is not Tom Brady. And I think that's where I kind of get lost in the conversation, lost in the argument, is like, if Tom Brady was playing for Sanders, yeah, I could, sure. But Tom Brady just thinks something. And thinking something does not make it reality. Thinking something does not mean Sanders is going to be good. It doesn't weigh on my opinion whatsoever, because any player could be a bust, any player could be a hit. And if he thinks that Sanders is worth the first overall pick, he's taking a gamble. And I think if Sanders wasn't Deion's son, if Shedeur wasn't Deion's son, would that be different? Right? Would that be different? Would he think that? Would he think that, and listen, Shedeur Sanders is, I'd say, of the crop of quarterbacks, the most pro-ready from a standpoint of he's been groomed for this. He has been groomed since he was freaking out the womb to be an NFL player, right? From a professional standpoint, from a leader standpoint, from a fundamental standpoint, this guy is trained and tried for this moment. But he's not Deion. He's not that type of athlete. He's not that type of player, right? Like, Sanders in last year's draft class would be QB5, maybe. You know what I mean? And look, last year's draft class was just ridiculous. I don't want to even use it as a comparison because it was an anomaly. Like every player hit. Craziest draft class I've ever seen in the first round. Like every single player hit for the most part. So I'll say it's more of an anomaly. Any player could be good. Any player could be bad. If the Giants think that Sanders is that good, yeah, of course they should go get him. I just don't think that they think he's that good. You know what I mean? Like, the film doesn't suggest that.
They wouldn't make the trade if they didn't feel that way.
Right, no, of course. And what I'm trying to say is, like, we've watched Sanders. We've watched a lot of his game. I don't see look, I'm not a freaking professional GM, but the truth is that we're obviously like amateurs doing our due diligence, but the reality is like guys being paid millions of dollars are making massive mistakes every single day. You know what I mean? So like they don't know anything either.
That's
they
why
can't
I brought
project
the
it.
Tom Brady thing into the conversation. I thought that was important. Like he is the GOAT, so
Right.
his opinion probably holds more value. That's why
It
I
could.
brought that up. I thought that would be, an interesting train of thought. If you were the Giants GM and you heard that Tom Brady wanted your quarterback, does that incentivize you more to make the move
But
and make sure you get your own quarterback?
But like my counter would be like, okay, like Howie Roseman has never played the game of football and is the best GM in football. You know what I mean? It's like you just
Sure,
never
yeah,
know
but
who's going to
okay,
have that
so all right,
valuation.
so then take Tom Brady out. If you were the Giants and you heard somehow Howie Roseman thought Shedeur Sanders was the best quarterback in the class,
Sure.
again, does that push you? Does that change your opinion? Does that make you want to go get that quarterback even more? It's really Tom Brady, whoever, interchangeable. This is just the line of thinking that I'm
Right.
trying to go through because this is something that the New York Giants, this is a bridge they're
Yeah.
going to have to cross. They're going to hear these things as we get closer to the draft, and so are we. Does interest in a quarterback make you more interested in him? Because I think that happened last year, right? Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy's a big one. Actually, let's use JJ McCarthy. That's a better example. Throughout the pre-draft process, he's a day 2, second, third round pick. Then we hear all this talk about, okay, the Giants are bringing him in on Easter. Okay, the Vikings just traded up for a second, first round pick to make sure that they can get him. All of this interest made the Vikings more interested, made them take him with a top 10 pick. Again, because they heard, oh, Sean Payton really likes JJ McCarthy. Sean Payton has an eye for quarterback talent. We got to make sure we get in front of the Broncos so we can draft JJ McCarthy so that the Broncos and Sean Payton don't get him. So again, that line of thinking that we've seen in the past that pushes teams to make moves for the quarterbacks that they like. Essentially what I'm saying is, will that happen to the Giants? Will they hear Brady likes Shedeur Sanders and try and move up and make sure that they get him? Will they hear that this team likes Cam Ward and now they have to position themselves to get in front of that team? That's really where I'm going with this whole conversation. And I think it's an interesting train of thought, and it really just speaks to the volume of, do the Giants let outside opinions influence their internal work? And should they let that happen? Because I think that's the other half of it.
They shouldn't.
I think too, there is an element to they should. There is an aspect of it. Tom Brady's word, Howie Roseman's word, like some of these top guys, if there is interest, and a lot of these people are all pointing to this guy is a superstar in the making, especially when you're in a front office that's made just about every possible mistake you could in the last 365 days, yeah, maybe if there is some interest from some of these top decision makers, your interest should peak as well.
Let me throw an element into the mix that we haven't really mentioned yet. The draft things, the things that people say, things that people do, nuggets that are thrown in could entirely be deceptive, right?
True.
So like if I'm Joe Shane and I'm hearing Tom Brady loves Shedeur Sanders, how can I trust that? How do you know that's true?
Sure, but that's why I said, that's why I wanted to bring up the example. If the Titans, you're on the phone with them, and they say, Tom Brady just offered us the Vegas Raiders future first-round pick for Shedeur Sanders. They're telling us that's exactly what's happening. Does that change your opinion? And maybe it doesn't change Alex Wilson's opinion. Do you think it would change Joe Shane's opinion, and do you think it should? And to me, I don't know if it should completely change his opinion, but if you already had conviction in Sanders, and now you're hearing that a team is convicted enough to throw the first-round pick, and that team is ran by Tom freaking Brady, you probably double down on your opinion. If you already thought Shedeur Sanders was QB1 in the class, that confirms that another team feels that way. You probably confirm your own bias, and you make the trade for Shedeur Sanders if you are the Giants in that case.
If that specific scenario unfolded, which is extremely
Very
specific.
I get it.
And I had Sanders as my QB1. I really liked him. And then Tom Brady was willing to go up and get him. In that instance, yeah, I'd probably be like, all right, to get the guy that we want, we're going to have to do this, right? We're going to have to.
Yes.
And in that instance, you're backed into a corner where you're like, this is our guy. We want him. We have to go get him. Like in that instance, yeah, you probably do let that impact you, but it's not because Tom Brady wants him and he thinks he's going to be great. It's because you liked him and you think he's going to be great.
Right.
And you don't want him to get him.
It's more of right. So, and that's why I wanted to move the conversation away from. It's not somebody's changing your opinion or giving you a new one. It's more them, confirming your own bias.
It's more competitiveness.
Exactly
in that instance. Yeah.
It's like
so, sure,
if you already thought he was
that.
QB1 and now Brady thinks he's QB1, Brady's going to get him. You've now confirmed to yourself, okay, so we were right. This guy is QB1. Let's make sure that we get him. I think that would be the line of thinking for the Giants. And again, it was a very specific scenario, but it's also very realistic if you're here.
It's possible. It's possible. And in my opinion, more so, like aside from that specific scenario, just based on the player alone, I don't think that he's clear-cut QB1, and I don't think that his arc for progression is that crazy in that. I think his floor is solid because his fundamentals are clean, footwork is great, he's got a good enough arm, he's an average athlete at best. I think his floor is solid, but the team has to be really good around him, right? He has to have a good offensive line. He's got to have good receivers. He's got to have a really good defense. He's got to have a lot of elements working around him. He's not going to win you games because of his heroics. I think that Cam Ward's progression, if he gets his fundamentals a little bit more cleaned up, if he finds that balance of hero ball, his progression could be like straight up. That's why I'm saying, like, from a pure player perspective, Cam is my QB1 because of the upside, and I'm trading. If I have to trade, if I have to make this decision, I want to go to first overall, I'm going for the player for the most upside, not the highest floor. Right? That's kind of where I, like, personally cross a red line, and it's like, if I'm going up to 1, it's because I'm going to get a guy that I think could win us a Super Bowl, not like plateau at a certain point because they just don't have that arc of progression. That's just my personal opinion on the prospects.
Yeah, I get that, and that's just your personal opinion on the prospects. I just want to throw out there my feeling towards the quarterback position is starting to shift after watching the latest playoffs. A lot of fans of the NFL, and Giants fans in particular, they did not feel like Jalen Hurts had the ceiling that he did, right? And to win a Super Bowl and do what he did. And I got to remind you, he did not play hero ball at any point in the playoffs. He game managed at a very high level and made a few really clutch throws. Mm-hmm. And so has Mahomes throughout the playoffs. And those are the teams in the Super Bowl. The risk-averse teams that actually played the game rather than playing as a hero and an individual. And Josh Allen just won MVP. That's fantastic. He still hasn't made it to the Super Bowl. The style of quarterback that's actually winning Super Bowls, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, now Jalen Hurts, the style of quarterback that's winning these Super Bowls is not the Cam Ward, Josh Allen style of quarterback, right? So if we're grouping Cam into that Josh Allen hero ball, insanely high all-pro ceiling, if we're putting him in that bucket, the bucket that we put Shedeur Sanders in is probably closer to the Brady, Burrow, Stafford, Jalen Hurts bucket, right? So
yeah, but
if we're looking at it as what's winning in the NFL right now, I would say that the majority of the top quarterbacks are in that bucket rather than the one that Cam Ward's going to find himself in.
Yeah, so my counter to that point is that it's not really the quarterback in this instance, it's the team. You know what I mean? Like, if you put that offensive line that the Eagles have with Patrick Mahomes, that's not even a close game. You know what I mean? Like, it's that offensive line is one of the best I've ever seen in history. And Saquon can also approve at that point. But not to mention, their defense was the number 1 defense in football. Like, they had a and like, what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to get at is this. Like, if you look at the Chiefs versus the Bills, for example, like, that's a better example of, like, the quarterbacking. It came down to defense, and Spags was that difference maker. And, the Bills didn't have the same defensive depth. They didn't have the same defensive play calling, the same defensive discipline. I think it's not about the quarterback all the time. It's about the team. And if you put Josh Allen on the Eagles, like, they may never lose a game. Like, that's kind of how I personally view it. Like, I think that like, Josh Allen's a way better quarterback than, and I'll let you speak there, because I think that's just great roster composition, really.
It's good points. You're not wrong in these points, but what I'm saying is the roster construction is different for a team building around a Jalen Hurts than it is around a Josh Allen, isn't it? Like, if Josh Allen was on the Eagles, would that roster look the same way? Would they have that offensive line? Would they focus on the defense as much, or would they focus on... You get what I'm saying? Like, the way that the roster is built for the Bills is built for Josh Allen. The way that the Eagles roster is built, it's built for Jalen Hurts. Like, you build around the quarterback, so you really have to pick your quarterback, that quarterback style of play, and then build around it. And the defenses that are stacked, like the Chiefs, I mean... Listen, I don't know. Mahomes is so weird because he can be the hero ball player. He can play in structure, so it's kind of hard to bring up the Chiefs as an example here. But, I don't know. I think that the way that these rosters are built is to complement their quarterback. And the Bills roster, I think, has holes all over the place.
I agree.
And they just ask Josh Allen to play hero ball and cover up those holes.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But like, Jalen Hurts is paid a little bit less.
Right.
And he's able to have a better roster built around him. And therefore, able to get... a Super Bowl. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and I think that makes sense. What I think is that the Bills' roster construction is actually bad. Like their team is not very good. Their secondary had holes. Their run defense had holes. Their receivers were not good. Their offensive line was not that good. Like Josh Allen, and this is why he won the MVP because he turned a subpar roster into a very, very effective team because of his heroics. If you had a good GM that built a disciplined roster with depth, hit on rookie draft classes, the Bills would be in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like they would be a really, really good team. The Chiefs, they managed to get value from players that obviously maybe others wouldn't. Like McDuffie has been tremendous. They let L'Jarius Sneed go. Chris Jones obviously has been phenomenal. Like they have and they have some of the best coaching in football. Their offensive line fell apart in the game yesterday, and we saw what happened. You know what I mean? Like the Bills' offensive line was not so good. The Eagles' offensive line is one of the best I've ever seen, and like its roster construction. Like I think yeah, the quarterback makes it's the most important position, right? But I think what we're learning here by watching the football isn't that it's the quarterback that's making the difference. It's that the roster construction from some of these good teams has been unbelievable. Like they're hitting on every single draft pick because the coaching is phenomenal. Like
Yes.
the Eagles coaching is unbelievable. And every single player that goes and plays a freaking snap for them somehow turns into a Pro Bowler. Like it's unbelievable. Like Zach Bond, holy crap. Like Nolan Smith, holy crap! Their draft class last year, everyone, Keenan Mitchell is a freaking monster. Like Avonte Maddox comes in on a critical fourth down with who was a Cooper DeJean out for a couple plays and makes a monster play. Like they're well coached, and it's like it's not the quarterback to me when in terms of play style. It's the freaking roster construction that's turning out to be the most important thing between these winners and losers. The Giants. Like you watch them play, man. When they need to make a play, they do not make it, right? When they need to have discipline, they don't have it. When they need to hit on draft picks and need to get maximum value, they don't have it. Deonte Banks, that young man, and Anthony, I know you will agree with this. There is no way that he should be as bad as he is. Like, no way. He is so physically talented. Like, their coaching is failing them.
Yes, coaching obviously matters. We say that all the time. Roster construction matters, all that stuff. I also think it's worth noting Jalen Hurts did a lot of work with his legs last night. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the defense was so keyed in on Saquon Barkley. It opened things up for Jalen Hurts to use his legs and become the Super Bowl MVP, right? Everybody was focused. Don't let Saquon Barkley beat you. Don't let him be the Super Bowl MVP, basically. Jalen Hurts takes off. He uses his legs. He picks up a lot of clutch first downs. And so, but what I'm really trying to get at, though, like, and you're making great points. I get it. Roster construction is paramount. You have to build around your quarterback. I'm saying the type of quarterback that you build around. I think that you build a different team when you're building around a Josh Allen versus when you're building around a Jalen Hurts. For Jalen Hurts, you're like, all right, so he's not going to make all these plays by himself. Let's get him a wide receiver one who's going to make those plays for him. All he has to do is throw it back shoulder, and A.J. Brown's going to make a 40-yard reception, right? For Josh Allen, you just expect him to go out there, run around for 30 seconds, and make the play. So you build the roster differently, and then you handicap yourself. You limit what you can do on your roster and what you build. But, yeah, we know as Giants fans better than anybody the detriment of not building around your quarterback properly. We saw it with Eli Manning. The Giants failed to build around him for a decade, and it turned his career into a lock for the first ballot Hall of Fame and now an eventual Hall of Famer. The Giants are the ones to blame for that, not Eli Manning. The Giants failed Eli several times throughout the second half of his career, and that's why he's not going to the Hall of Fame right now. So, yes, you make a lot of great points. All that's true. We've definitely gone off on a on a long tangent, new avenue down a whole different conversation about roster construction. So I'm going to try and reel it back in to the NFL draft and trading up for the first overall pick, because I think what we can do here, Alex, we've really covered a lot of these bases. We've rounded a lot of them. Let's go ahead and try and nail down first overall pick. New York Giants trying to trade for it. What are you willing to give up at this point? And I know it's early. This opinion is going to change between now and April, no doubt. But here we are in February. Hot off the heels of this report, right? The Titans want to trade down. The Giants might be interested. What do you think they're willing to give up, and what would you give up? Would you give up anything to move up to number one in this class, or you're just staying put no matter what? And if you're the New York Giants, what do you think that they are willing to give up to move up to number one?
So, man, it's a really good question because, last year, I would have given up 2 first-round picks to go get Jaden Daniels. That was my guy, right? I would have done it without even thinking about it because that was the type of player that I watched extensively and was like, this guy has the potential to be your future. and he has the potential to save an organization like the Commanders of all teams and turn them into competitors overnight, right? I saw that like on the film, on the screen. He did it at LSU. He competed against the best and dominated, right? You saw it. Sanders, I see red flags against non-ranked teams. You know what I mean? I see him get blown out by BYU in the freaking bowl game. Like I see, and look, I get that there's upside
They
there.
were ranked. They were really good. So
No. I'm saying that's what I'm saying. Like the one ranked team they saw, they got destroyed against, and like, or one of the two, and that to me, I don't get that feeling that he's going to come in and beat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving in Arlington in primetime football, right? I saw that with Jaden Daniels. I saw that capacity because we're looking at different competition, different poise, different qualities, different mobility. Like I saw a different player. I saw a player that I thought was going to be great, and I would have been willing to risk it for that. When I look at Sanders, I like him, but I'm not willing to mortgage future draft capital to get him because I don't think he's that type of player. That's just my personal opinion. Other teams other people may think differently, and they certainly do. And I don't hate or dislike Sanders. I just don't want to sell the farm for him. What I do think is this: to move up to first overall pick, the most I'm willing to give up is our second round pick this year. No freaking way am I mortgaging our 2026 first round pick to move up 2 spots. Because if I'm John Mara, Joe Schoen and Brian Dibble are on the hot seat. And if they give away a future first round pick and they get fired, we are not going to be able to hire any of the top candidates next year. And I think that is a real situation. John Mara gave him an ultimatum. It's playoffs or death, basically. Like he said it blatantly in public. If that's the case, like you can't let them mortgage your future like that. You can't let them trade a first round pick for a player that, in my eyes, and look, if I'm seeing it, and I think most people agree, like 95% of people agree that they would not do this, but they would have done it for a player last year because that draft class was just stacked with talent. Like it's just different calibers of players. Like if you can sit there right now and type out on your keyboard in the YouTube comments that you think that Shedeur Sanders has the same, and you're willing to give up similar draft capital to move up to the first overall pick, and you think he's similar to Jaden Daniels as a prospect, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. That's just the truth. Because they're totally different players, totally different upsides, totally different projections. If you're willing to do that, because that's what it's going to cost. The cost doesn't change, right? The cost doesn't change. The player does, though. And I think that's where I stand right now is like these quarterbacks are not even in the same realm. And they could be like, yeah, it's unproven, unprojected, but from a prospect projection standpoint, they're just not there compared to those other guys. I could justify it by the skin of my teeth to go get Cam Ward. I could justify it because I think the upside is that substantial, but he is still far behind the prospects of last year, in my opinion. And that's kind of where I stand is like, I just don't think that conviction is even remotely similar to the conviction that we heard Brian Dable say, yeah, I'd go up and get Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's saying that this year. I'm going to go get this guy. Like that conviction, there's no way it's similar. The only reason they would do it is because they're desperate. That's the only reason they would do that is because they're desperate, not because the player's actually worth it. And the max I'd give up as a second round pick this year if we had to do this. And even so, if they go up and get Sanders, you get to walk away with either Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, or Travis Hunter. 2 of them are bona fide blue chip prospects. Like one of the few sure things in this draft, and obviously nothing's for sure, 100% guaranteed, but you get to walk away with one of the 2, maybe 3 players in this draft class that have the highest probability of hitting. And this team needs talent, man. Do they need talent? And as close to sure thing as they can get on a rookie contract. Like, if we end up not trading up to get Sanders or Cam Ward, we still get to walk away with one of the most sure things in this draft class, and neither Cam or Shedeur are even close to sure things. So, like, that's kind of where I stand in that instance. I'd be willing to give up a second round pick if I had to, back against the wall, make this decision. But the alternative is you just walk away with one of the blue chip prospects in a really weak draft class all across the board from first round grade perspectives. So that's kind of how I stand at it right now. Like, obviously, my opinion comes off as I don't like Shedeur Sanders. That's not the case. I just don't think I'm willing to mortgage future draft capital for him. And I think that's a valid and fair perspective because I just don't think he's that type of prospect, that type of projection, unless everything around him, the roster construction is absolutely perfect. And guys, the truth is Joe Schoen's not going to build a perfect roster. It's not happening. You know what I mean? It's not happening. Like, we need to be realistic about this. He's not Howie Roseman, right? He's not one of these top tier GMs. He's one of the worst in in football right now. We have to think about that in terms of what this team needs. And if we're not going to trade up and we're going to miss out on the quarterback we want, take the best player that's going to give you a best chance to hit.
Can I just make a counterpoint here? Let's say last year, the New York Giants, when they were trying to trade up for Drake May, Jaden Daniels, what we heard was that they had a price limit, right? They had a certain price tag that they weren't willing to exceed. So, again, in that line of thinking, let's take that report and let's just pretend that we fully believe it. Let's say that the Giants offered 2 first-round picks for Drake May, and that was their limit. That was the most they were willing to offer. However, the Patriots said, if you offer us 4, fine, we'll do it. We don't want to give up Drake May, but if you offer us 4 first-round picks, we can't say no to that. Looking back on that, would you have offered those 4 first-round picks? You'd have a quarterback. You'd have Drake May. Some people already view him as a potential top 10 quarterback going into next year, right? Drake May's a stud. So it's like, if we're setting a price limit for the quarterback, right? Like if you're going to say, oh, I trade up to the first overall pick, but I wouldn't give up more than this. Is that not the line of thinking that prevented the Giants from getting a franchise quarterback in 2024?
Yeah, I think that whatever their price limit was, it was irrelevant because the Patriots weren't trading and the Commies weren't trading.
No, I know, but okay, but that's not what I said. I'm saying if the Patriots had a price tag that was higher than the Giants' price limit, so they didn't end up making a deal, is that line of thinking, we're not going past our limit, is that not the line of thinking that got the New York Giants deeper into this mess, that caused them to miss out on a franchise quarterback? And then if that's the case, why would you set such a strict limit for this year's draft class and for a quarterback? I know for you it's because you think it's a different caliber of quarterbacks, it's a different caliber of prospects. I understand that. But if you're Joe Shane and you think that Shedeur Sanders is a franchise quarterback, why would you limit yourself? Why would you set a price limit? You have to go ahead and you have to make that trade.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. If the case that he thinks that he's a franchise quarterback and he can save this organization, save his job, save the fan base from misery, there should be no price limit to go up 2 spots. You know what I mean? There shouldn't be. What I'm trying to say is I don't see a world where they view these prospects, either Cam or Sanders, as worthy of having carte blanche in terms of draft capital expenditure. You know what I mean?
I think they do. I think personally, they view Shedeur Sanders in that light. I think that's why we've heard so much chatter. I think that's why they've been around him so much. I think that they think he's the best quarterback in this class. I think they think he's a franchise quarterback. They had a second-round grade on him last year. He only got better and better this past year. I think they do see him in that light. And if that's the case, if they make that trade, I don't know. They could be completely wrong. They could be completely right. We'll find out in 3 years' time.
We will.
But if they feel that way about it, I cannot be mad if they make the move personally, just because that's the right practice. Here's the thing. If it's the right practice, then it's the right practice. If it's the wrong practice, I'll criticize it, but that's the right practice.
If they make that move, I mean, yeah, their jobs are on the line anyway, obviously, because like they have to get returns from that. But I just don't trust Joe Shane's opinion anymore.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? And that's
really what it comes down to.
Yeah, right?
I don't trust Joe Shane. But that's why 3 months ago I said that they should fire him. And we're not in that situation. So we do have to try and figure out what would we do if we were Joe Shane and if we had this backwards logic all the time that we think with, right? Like we have to try and go through the Joe Shane process, and that's kind of difficult because his process hasn't always been sound. But I'm saying if the process is I think he's a franchise quarterback, so I'm trading up and I'm not setting a price limit.
Yeah,
then that to me is the right process, and I get behind the decision.
He will if they think that Sanders is the savior, they will go up and get him for sure. No doubt.
But agree that they should if they feel that way. You don't feel that way, but if they feel that way,
yeah, of course, of course. If they feel that way, they should go get him. But and you guys know my percent. I'm not going to rewind the whole thing again. But yeah, like if Joe Shane and Brian Debo feel that Sanders is going to be the future, that he's going to be amazing in the NFL, yeah, you should go get him. Obviously. Now, is he going to be? That's a different story. We'll find out, as you said, in 3 years.
Find out one day.
Which in that case, if they feel that way, they're gonna go and get him. But I'm curious to see what that will cost. Because I still can't. I'd give a 2nd-round pick and like Kayvon to go get him maybe. Like if we had to kick in something else, because like I just don't see a world where you give up a 1st-round pick in the future, knowing how dead these guys are in the water. It's just everything about this is like it just grinds my gears. You know what I mean? It's so tough.
I really don't think it's going to cost a future 1st-round pick.
It shouldn't. Right? 2 spots. It shouldn't.
I really don't think it should, and I don't think it will. I know people are going to say, oh, it's a quarterback. It's always going to cost at least an extra first round pick. No, it's a weak draft class, and the Titans are way more incentivized to take a second, move down 2 spots than they are to take a
And still get the
future
guy they
first
want.
and move down 5 spots. Right. They could still get a Travis Hunter
Hunter
and
or
Abdul at
Abdul,
3.
yeah.
They could still get a blue chipper. If they move down to 6, they're not getting that blue chipper.
They
So
might even get Cam.
they could get Cam at
Even
3.
waiting.
It's totally possible. So they might trade down, get their QB1 in the class and an extra second round pick. They're going to take that over the future first round pick every single time, in my opinion, personally. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to cost the Giants a future first. And if it costs them anything outside of a future first, I'm probably going to do it myself if I were the GM, because I do believe in Shedeur Sanders, and I do think he's got the potential to be a franchise quarterback. So, and that's really where I rest with this. And I think this was a good discussion. I think we're going to have this one, and it's going to have very many variations
I wish
of
we
it
could
across
fast
the next few
forward.
months.
I wish we could fast forward 2 months right now. This is gonna be. I know, like every year we say this. I thought last year would be a defining moment for the Giants, like get the quarterback and everything. But like now, it's like you don't have a choice. Like now it's Joe Shane's future depends on this decision.
Right.
And that's
So that's
where,
why
and
I
that's
think they're gonna do it.
and that's why we thought like they should have moved on, because Joe Shane making a decision with his back against the wall, and considering how horrible his decision making has been with his back not against the wall, now he's forced into a position to make a risky choice. It is everything you don't want to be. This is the scenario you don't want to be in as a fan's perspective, because you're looking at your GM back against the wall, has to do something aggressive in a weak draft class at quarterback. It's a freaking nightmare to be a Giants fan in this situation. It's a nightmare because you want to have that objective perspective. You want to have a GM that's safe and saying, all right, this is our first year, second year, we can take the BPA, we're still rebuilding. But the truth is, you know what our mistake has been, Anthony? Year in, Dave Gettleman, Joe Shane, they both said the same BS. They both said we can win while we rebuild. It is a complete farce. It is a complete lie that you can win while rebuilding. Because the only way to win while rebuilding is to hit on a franchise quarterback. And they should have went and made that chance, took that risk years ago. The same year they extended Daniel Jones, they should have freaking got it. They should have drafted a freaking a quarterback. You know what I mean? That's what they should have done. And in hindsight, obviously. But it's a lesson, my friend, that we have learned. It's a lesson that we will remember for the rest of our lives. We find ourselves in this position again. We're going to say, we don't trust that freaking dude. Take a quarterback, protect yourself, prepare for the future, because, yeah, maybe you don't have a pass rusher, but you have a quarterback. And that is the most important thing right now in terms of just getting the ball rolling. We have been rolling backward. Nick Neighbors, one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen at the receiver position. 3 wins. Doesn't matter. Who cares? No, I don't. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to just keep taking, and I know you're a proponent of this, keep taking the shots at quarterback, even if you have a guy that you maybe have some conviction in.
Yeah, and that's why I was going to say, I know you said it's hindsight now, and that we've learned this lesson. Man, that whole 2023 offseason, I was pounding the table to franchise tag Daniel Jones and take a quarterback in the middle round. So it's not even just hindsight. Like, this is what the Giants should have done. We said it back then, and we're saying it again now because it's even more true than it was back then. So, yeah, we have learned lessons. I just hope that the Giants have too, and we'll see what they do this offseason. This was a really good discussion. I think we went down many different avenues, and we really hit on a lot here, which we love to do. We usually, if you guys haven't gotten the gist of it, we pick a topic, and then we just see how many topics we can spawn out of that topic, and we just have a conversation for you all. And I know you all do enjoy it, but again, make sure you guys like if you are enjoying them. And also just want to say, based on the conversations we just had, Alex, we got into some really interesting stuff about like domino effects and, rumors and stuff like that. I'm just reminded that today is February 10th. The Super Bowl just ended. It's a very short while before the combine kicks off, and all of those rumors hit level 10. That dial gets cranked all the way up. So by the end of this month, guys, if you're not subscribed, you better be subscribed. If you are subscribed and you don't have those notifications on, get those things turned on, because by the end of this month, the content is going to be really fun, and the rumors around the NFL and the Giants are going to be really juicy, and it's going to be a great time on this channel. So I just can't wait for that. Like, I know you're saying, oh, I can't wait to fast forward to April. I don't know, dude. This combine and all the rumors, I love that stuff. I think it's so much fun for us as we get to have conversations and interact with everybody in the comment sections and engage with you all and hear your thoughts, especially when we do live streams as well. So It's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe even we'll go live, Alex. We could totally go live for a day of the scouting combine. Maybe react to the drills and the rumors in live time. Maybe we do something like that if that's something you guys are interested in. You know it. Just comment it down below, and we always listen to your feedback. So leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, and make sure you go check us out on Apple and Spotify. Give us a 5-star review if you're listening over there. But without further ado, we'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.